so that if and when a new strain of flu like the Spanish flu crops up 5 years from now or a decade from now, we've made the investment and we're further along to be able to catch it. The funding we're asking for is needed to keep strengthening our capacity here at home so we can respond to any future Ebola cases. It's needed to help us partner with other countries to prevent and deal with future outbreaks and threats before they become epidemics. We were lucky with H1N1 that it did not prove to be more deadly. We can't say we're lucky with Ebola because obviously it's having a devastating effect in West Africa, but it is not airborne in its transmission. There may and likely will come a time in which we have both an airborne disease that is deadly. And in order for us to deal with that effectively, we have to put in place an infrastructure, not just here at home, but globally, that allows us to see it quickly, isolate it quickly, respond to it quickly. So that if and when a new strain of flu like the Spanish flu crops up 5 years from now or a decade from now, we've made the investment and we're further along to be able to catch it. It is a smart investment for us to make. It's not just insurance, it is knowing that down the road we're going to continue to have problems like this, particularly in a globalized world, where you move from one side of the world to the other in a day. So this is important now, but it's also important for our future and our children's future and our grandchildren's future. I cannot think of a better example of an area where we should all agree than passing this emergency funding to fight Ebola and to set up some of the public health infrastructure that we need to deal with potential outbreaks in the future.
You know, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically that will go away in April. This moment, we think we have it very much in hand.
Dr. Fauci said earlier this week that the lag in testing was, in fact, a failing. Do you take responsibility for that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
You said that you don't take responsibility, but you did disband the White House Pandemic Office, and the officials that were working in that office left this administration abruptly. So what responsibility do you take to that? And the officials that worked in that office said that the White House lost valuable time because that office wasn't disbanded. What do you make of that?
Well, I just think it's a nasty question because what we've done is, and Tony has said numerous times that we've saved thousands of lives because of the quick closing. And when you say me, I didn't do it. We have a group of people. I could ask perhaps my administration, but I could perhaps ask Tony about that because I don't know anything about some of the people we cut. They haven't been used for many, many years. And if we ever need them, we can get them very quickly. And rather than spending the money, and I'm a business person, I don't like having thousands of people around when you don't need them.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. Fix the camera. Zoom in. All right. Welcome to the show. As you see, we're live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And few technical difficulties, but we'll get it together. But as you see, Donald Trump is, as usual, wrong. And you can see that President Obama gave all sorts of indication of what we should be doing as far as preparing for the pandemics in the future. Now, this piece here, as you saw by the dates, if you're really paying attention, that was in 2014. All right? So I think it was, I forget the date, February 2014. We had a pandemic team set in place. What you see by this piece, that's why I played it, showed how Trump thought that it was unnecessary to have these people employed when we were wasting money. Now, he said that this year, after he knew that there was a pandemic, after he knew that the virus was out, because he knew the virus was out January 28th. All right? So here we have the con man working for Putin, destroying our democracy, as we see how he's jumping up and down and stomping and fussing and fighting about having been cheated out the election. A pampered little boy, that's what we got here. And if you look at it, you can see the Russians. Hillary warned us about him a long time ago, about he was a puppet for Putin. All right? Now, Leroy, I particularly had a hard time convincing you of that. I think you've come around by now. Fix your mic in there. So, Dr. Bowles, are you there? Did you get to see all the what we presented to you?
I saw what was presented, yes.
What did you think?
Well, I was aware of when he said it in 2014.
Okay. All right.
So it wasn't new information for me.
All right. So we see that we're presenting what's happening, our case study. Well, I'm bringing my public up to date. A lot of people are not aware of this fact that Obama was well prepared for this pandemic when it came, but they don't realize that Trump just dismissed these people. And we knew that he knew about this virus in January 28, 2020. And he called it a hoax back then. And we still have people stomping up and jumping up and down today calling it a hoax, that you shouldn't wear a mask, that the virus is or the vaccines or implants is a total reset set up by Illuminati. We've gone over a lot of different cases. But we have you here, Doc, to set everything straight and tell us our mission. And I'm going to follow your lead and tell me what we should be doing. All right? Dr.
Well,
Bowles?
that's quite an assignment.
I know. Well, you're the person that can fulfill it by your last show and all that you've prepared us for since then.
It sounds like the Mission Impossible introduction, should you choose to accept this assignment.
It's God's plan.
My response to that, Winston, is in 2014, and they talked about the Ebola as being a primary. Ebola has surfaced several times, decades apart, in parts of Africa. And as it was demonstrated in 2014, and even more recently, there is a vaccine and cure for Ebola, but it is not administered worldwide. I think the whole world who are interested watched 3 Americans get airlifted out of Africa and transported to Emory University Hospital, and 3 days later, they walked out completely healthy, when 20,000 to 30,000 people in Africa continued to die. So when you talk about a pandemic group that had been assembled during the Obama administration, we really have to examine more closely what the American role is in general when we talk about healthcare. Do I think that the Obama pandemic team would have stopped what happened in January 2020? My answer is no. I do think such a team may have facilitated better information. We would not have had to watch an individual dismiss the disease and then recommend not following both his own chief health officer's advice, CDC's advice, and WHO advice. So I think such a committee may have been a public asset in ensuring that more balanced information was given to the public, so that what we're now witnessing with so many deaths, so many hospitalizations in these United States, there would be many of them still alive, had a better communication be initiated earlier. So that point I have no problem stating. But Americans' reputation for covering the world's health is not a good, it's a black eye. We have the ability for curing Ebola. We showed it, we demonstrated, but we still have people on the African continent that die of it. And the deaths of such widespread infection as Ebola keeps reoccurring in Africa because vaccines against the Ebola virus have never been administered or never been initiated. You watched warp speed for the development of a virus here in the United States, and this the present administration chose to give the charter to a pharmaceutical company that had never produced a vaccine before. Now, I don't know about you, but I have 4 brothers who played sports, and by following their career, and I won't slight my sister, I have a sister that was quite an athlete as well, but the world of champions is you go with a winner.
Right.
And I could not understand why we gave $12 billion to someone who had never succeeded.
Now, who was that? Who was where did the $12 billion go?
Oh, to Moderna. It was NIH and Moderna who were chartered to do warp speed.
Okay.
And that intent was bring a vaccine to fruition in America. As I hope you know, Pfizer is coming out of Belgium.
Pfizer's coming out of Belgium.
Yes, Pfizer's not an American-based company.
Wait a minute. Pfizer is not an American-based company?
No. If you have been following, you may not. And I
We're talking about the
you.
same Pfizer, right?
No, Pfizer is a major pharmaceutical distributor in the U.S., but by no means, look at the name Pfizer. They're coming out of Belgium, darling. Okay, so Moderna and NIH, American company, was given huge amounts of money to fast track getting a vaccine. And the only thing I could do when I scratched my head is say, how did you go to a pharmaceutical company that had such a poor track record as your singular support for a vaccine? But that's what happened, in case you didn't know.
Okay. So, so Pfizer has a problem with the virus in the UK now. I understand that if you have any allergies.
I have side.
So I'm allergic to penicillin, so I shouldn't take the vaccine, according to what I'm hearing.
No, false.
That's false?
That's false.
Well, I heard that this morning.
Let me do a little immunology here.
Okay.
For those of you who've never studied immunology, immunology is the science of immune response. And there is a whole science. It's not just a bookmark in a biology book. When we talk about a vaccine, it has a specific objective. And that objective is to introduce something that is harmful to you in such a way that you can develop an immune response without suffering the harmfulness of the real thing. That's the purpose. People who are hyperallergenic, I'll move away from COVID for a minute. Let's say you have bee sting allergy. Anyone who has had a bee sting allergy know that the allergist, when you go every 2 weeks, will give you a little bee venom. Not a lot, just a little. And they'll give you a little more the next time and a little more the next time and so forth. Because what they're doing is they're giving you just enough of the offending agent that your body recognizes it and responds to only the offending agent and not get you in trouble. Because an overactive response can be deadly to the person. So keep that in mind. Overactivity is a bad thing. So I want to give you just enough so you react just enough to protect you, not harm you. So let's go back to vaccines. In vaccines, the scientist takes just a piece of the offender, whether it is a bacteria, a virus, whatever the offender is. In this case, both Pfizer and Moderna did something that's never been done before. This is new science.
Okay.
Instead of taking a piece of the virus, they genetically engineered messenger RNA. And they have the messenger RNA, which they attached to a vector. We'll just call it a vector. And when they inject it in you, your body reads the messenger RNA, which was genetically engineered in the lab, and creates a piece of the virus or foreign protein. So people ask, what do you think about that? There is no precedence. You can't point to anything and say, this is going to happen, this won't happen. All we know is this is what we want to happen. I want your body to take this messenger RNA, which was made in the lab, create a protein that is like the protein on a virus. But because this protein was made by your own body, it cannot give you the sickness that the real virus can. But this protein can trigger your immune response. And that's why it's a two-shot deal. The first shot is to give your body a taste. It lets your body recognize this protein. And the second shot elicits a full-blown immune response. That's why both Pfizer and Moderna requires 2 shots, and the shots have to be 3 weeks apart.
Tell me this, Doc. If you had Biden's ear right now, let's say we're talking to President-elect Biden right this very second, what would you say to him? What would be your approach to this problem?
I say, Mr. President, that you have appointed your COVID-19 panel, I would be very interested in being included on that panel for the following reason.
Okay.
There are policies that exist in these United States that marginalize the very poor, which unfortunately is highly represented in the people of color group of your citizens. I mean marginalized, meaning there are policies that prevent the ideal treatment for diabetes, for hypertension, for renal disease, and so forth. Okay. And with such comorbidities, this population is the same population that will least benefit from vaccination. Why is that? Their body has a sluggish immune system. How do we know? They're the ones dying from the virus. And they're the ones who appear to also have cytokine storm, or the aggressive hyperimmune response that results in their death. Where is my proof? Look at New Orleans in February. Look at Detroit. Look at Chicago. The people who are marginalized by the institutionalized prejudice behaviors of the American health system are the same peoples who will least likely respond to the vaccine. Therefore, what you're offering, saying, well, this group needs to be vaccinated, the scientists out there need to tell you and anyone else that if you are at highest risk because your immune system is sluggish, you are also the ones whose immune system is least likely to benefit from vaccination. So there has to be an alternative in the approach, that one size does not fit all. That's right. And these changes need to be factored in now, not later, not 6 months from now, not after something has been realized, but while the foundation is being poured.
Well, I'm glad we're talking today because we've been very upset that we haven't been able to reach the people that are necessary to reach. That's why we're talking directly to President Biden, direct. Hopefully we can get this tape to you because we have an expert here who is, like you said, black people got you in office and you have our backs. Now we have a representative of our community that we think should be part of your team. Now, she's making a lot of sense since this is all brand new to all of us. I think we should have his ear on this. What do you say to that, Mary? Mary Sweeney?
Thank you first for having me back again. And Dr. Bowles, thank you. I start out by saying that the most important thing for Biden to know is that this is a new day.
Right.
He called that this is a new opportunity for America to treat Americans and stand as Americans, to foster in the best opportunity of health care for all people.
Right.
My request for the voices that listen to me is that Dr. Velma Bowles be introduced to the Biden administration with their transition, that wherever they're talking about the health issue, the policies, the procedures, and the mandate that they anticipate to move forward with, that her voice, her experience should be at that table.
Okay.
That is a call that I'm making as a member of every entity publicly that I belong to, starting with the NAACP, starting with Clergy and Citizens with a Purpose, starting with the residents of Harlem, Esplanade Gardens,
Amen.
Polo Grounds,
Amen.
Wrangell Houses,
Right.
National Action Network,
Right.
the Bahamian American Association,
Okay.
the Caribbean News, just as a start. That every entity should hear what Dr. Velma Bowles has said to us today. All of the talking heads publicly with the media, that's what they're doing. They're talking.
Right.
It's one point to have a view from a physician. It's another point to have a view from the scientists.
Right.
And it's another point to have the view from our politicians. But what I'm hearing is what I have never heard before. Is someone that is speaking directly from the facts that have been documented and saying that they are willing and able to sit to the table. So if our newly elected President Biden and Kamala Harris are sincere about what they're proposing,
That's right.
then my request is to have Dr. Velma Bowles sitting at the transition table.
Amen.
Now, how they do it is fine,
Right.
but she needs to be there.
Right.
And I hope that she would accept that as a challenge, because everyone right now has been meeting. I received correspondence just yesterday from the NAACP stating that they have met with the newly elected Biden-Harris team,
Okay.
and they're talking about health issues.
Right.
But I have never heard anyone, and I'm a life member for the NAACP. I am involved with different medical institutions. Mount Sinai, have met with several members there, Harlem Hospital, all of the elected officials. But I've never heard anyone talk from this position.
Right.
And that is my request. That is my plea. And as I have stated on other shows that we have had, that no one talked about the fact that the virus was out there. No one has laid it out to us in layman terms so that we could understand and digest it. We're basically kindergartners.
Right.
And the last time that we spoke, Dr. Bowles, I said to you that this is pre-kindergarten
That's right.
for the lay people that are going to be directly affected. So we already know from the current events that several people that have not followed the science and the essence of social distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands, and all of that nature, that we've heard and seen that they have fallen victim to this virus. Now, was that because they were disobedient, negligent, or thought it was a hoax? I don't know. But I do know that no one has spoken in the manner that Dr. Velma Bowles has spoken to us over the last 3 to 4 times that we've had this public opportunity to speak. So I'm saying to everyone, talk to your physicians, share it with them. Just the fact that you know that there's 2 vaccines that's being presented to us. Understand where they're coming from. Understand why is it that one has to be kept in such sub-cold temperature. What's the difference? What's the effect of it? And it's not a one-fit-all. And when you talk about the persons that are getting it, yes, we have underlying health conditions. But how and what and where will the side effects kick in? Who's going to monitor that? Who's going to be able to look at whoever the frontline workers are? And when I look back at the video that was just presented, this is where the trust factor comes in. It has been stated on public television that more than 50% of the population have a fear. Rightfully so. It's a fear because we don't know, and we have found that sometimes we just can't trust.
That's right.
And if we can't trust the people that are in authority, which we are listening to, which are making rules and regulations supposedly in the best of our interests, then we're in trouble. So my final comment on that is to have someone that I trust, and that I think that people that know me, trust me, they believe that I am not going to sugarcoat anything, that we push to have Dr. Velma Bowles involved. Allow her to present to them that say that they're concerned about our health, our welfare, and look at the policies. Because I do know, as I said before, you can go to the doctor and you pull out your insurance card and they don't accept it. So now where you stand. So it is in policies.
Excellent.
Well said. Well said.
Excellent.
This is coming from our hearts, Doctor. Ever since we've been exposed to you by Brother Leroy,
Yes.
my real brother, we Harlemites have stood tall and backed you 200%, because what you speak, you're a real sister. You know, you're looking out for us. And Biden has claimed to be have our back. So I expect that we'll find some way to get this information to Brother Biden. Brother Leroy, you brought this jewel to us.
I wanted to, and you know, it's the value and the importance of black talk shows, alternative media, and Manhattan Neighborhood Network to have a show like this to run as long as you run, and providing the kind of information that you have provided. I want to add to Sister Sweeney's comments, and yes, it is very easy to endorse Sister Velva Bowles to be a part of that health team that he's putting together, that Biden and his team are putting together. The thing that tends to be missing from those kind of committees, or however they phrase them, commissions, is a grassroots appreciation. And when I say grassroots, the fact that she has worked in emergency medicine, been a director of clinics in Louisiana and in South Carolina and Missouri, is fit for her to be a voice, to be there representing the needs of not only black people, but white poor people that she's
That's
helped.
right.
The question I have for Sister Bowles is clarity. I need clarity on this, that what we understand, I'm talking about we as consumers, I'm a consumer, taking the role as a consumer. What we understand is that black people have been, let's say, overrepresented as far as being victims of COVID. What you laid out today is that there is a broader group of potential victims of COVID as it relates to the vaccine, that the healthcare industry in America has positioned black people poor people, black included, poor people for getting inferior medical attention and medical drugs, and that puts more of the poor in a position to have a negative reaction to the vaccines at this point in time, based on what they say is in the vaccines. And the bottom line is that they're more at risk. That's what I'm hearing you say. They're more at risk based on the poor health care in America than what we have been led to believe, that a person who's diabetic, a person who's obese, a person who's, let's say, on kidney dialysis, that poor health care creates a bigger base for COVID to work in. Is that, how close am I to understanding?
I
Dr.
am
Bowles?
absolutely beaming and smiling, Brother Leroy, because it tells me you've listened and listened well. What I was saying is that the institutionalized policies, and I'm going to say institutionalized prejudices in the American healthcare system puts poor people, people of color are disproportionately in that group, at higher risk. And you may ask, what is your proof, Dr. Bowles? I invite you to remember that in February, when black people showed up at the emergency room, and they went to the emergency room because primary care physicians, if you do not have health care and you do not have insurance, many of the poor will have to visit the emergency room as their primary source of assistance.
Yes. Right.
As the persons presented to the ER and gave their symptoms and stated their illness, they were turned away because policy said you could only be tested for COVID if you had a fever and a cough.
Right. Right.
And they predicated that on Chinese people and Italian people. But all of the black Americans that showed up and got sent home, and in some cases 4 times, 5 times, when they showed up, they were so sick that they died disproportionately. And it was only 3 months later that they started saying, oh, well, COVID is not just a respiratory disease, that yes, there are other presentation factors. My point to be made is the black man who presented with genuine complaint was disregarded because his complaint did not match the policy approved complaint. My question is, if you vaccinate that same group and they have a response that was not predicted, not expected, are they not still the very group that can be turned away, disregarded, not monitored, and their symptoms not recorded as some kind of negative until it's too late?
That's right.
My concern is high, and why I am so adamant in talking. They come and say, Dr. Bowles, should I take the vaccine? And my answer is, I cannot advise you. That's a personal decision. But make sure you are well informed. If you are in the comorbidity group, you have already been defined as someone who has a sluggish immune system. And the whole purpose of a vaccine is to give you an immunity. So it seems to me counterintuitive, America, to be injecting a vaccine into someone who has a questionable response. And not only that, it has been demonstrated that if you have a comorbidity, your body's already stressed. And if you have anything like asthma or respiratory problems, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, or any indication that you have what we call a hyperactive immune system, meaning autoimmune diseases, that this virus vaccine can trigger the cytokine storm response, and we call that an anaphylaxoid response.
Repeat that, please. Vitacon response?
It's called anaphylaxoid. Anaphylaxoid, many people know the word anaphylaxis.
Yeah.
Anaphylaxis means you're allergic to peanut butter and you ate a peanut butter sandwich.
Okay.
That means you're going to die. Why? Because your throat swells shut, your blood pressure drops, your heart can speed up. And if you have any existing condition, listen to the symptoms. Your heart speeds up. Your throat swells shut. You can't breathe. Your blood pressure drops. If you have any kidney issue and your blood pressure drops, you will die because now you're in a renal failure situation. So if by definition there's a possibility for an anaphylaxoid response among people who have underlying conditions, what special provisions are made to monitor that population? Are you going to have a special clinic where such symptoms that might be reported? Do you have a team that will respond? If I show up and I have hypertension and diabetes and I took the vaccine 2 weeks ago and I'm short of breath and my tongue feels swollen, am I going to be sent home? Or are you going to have a team saying, bring that person back immediately because we have provisions to investigate those symptoms?
Exactly.
Because we don't have insurance, we will be showing up at emergency rooms because urgent care is you pay them $150 up front or you are not seen.
So how can we prepare ourselves for this, even without, you being on Biden's team? I mean, in case you don't make it that far. I mean, we're behind you, but even if you don't, we need to be prepared for this anyway. So how would you instruct us to deal with it?
You're asking me to advise you on the unknown. See, the biggest horror to me, although I can tell you all of the bad risk factors and things to look for, it is all unknown. And that's why, Winston, it's not enough to say if I don't make it. If they don't choose me, let somebody on the team hear me.
Okay.
If they don't choose me, let someone who has the same understanding that I have speak up. See,
That's
I'm
what I
not
wanted to
trying
hear.
to champion me.
Yeah.
That's right.
But what I am
Winston.
describing is an issue that cannot be ignored or should not be ignored. I
Okay.
mean, the 73% of all deaths in New Orleans to COVID-19 were black people in February.
73%?
That statistic is a black eye.
73%?
73% of the early deaths of COVID in Louisiana, in the New Orleans, right after Mardi Gras, were black people. Chicago had 68. Detroit had 63. The numbers reveal that black people's symptoms were straight out ignored because it did not fit the paradigm of a cough and fever. Wow. I know, because emergency room colleagues would call and say, Dr. Bowles, we had so many black people come in, they have diarrhea, they have stomach ache, and there was a joke about all the toilet paper being bought out of the stores right at the beginning. It's because the black people were having GI complaints.
Oh, wow.
Diarrhea.
But it was a joke. They were saying, oh, we have no more toilet paper. We got to order toilet paper. It was a joke. It was made fun of. No one stopped and said, okay, this new need for toilet paper says there is a part of our population suffering disproportionately with diarrhea. Why wasn't that response? Right. It wasn't. It was a joke. It was a funny. We're going to order some more toilet paper. Please. And they even put up posters. You can only buy 2 packs of toilet paper. And I'm saying they were looking at finance and finding humor when the data was saying there is a population that's having a problem here.
Dr. Bowles, we have one of our co-hosts on the phone. He wasn't able to get here because of, well, you explain yourself, your lack of your presence, Graham.
Okay. Good afternoon. This is the third time I've seen you. I haven't had a chance to be in studio when you were there, but your information is most valuable.
Yes.
I work at a food pantry, and I was notified on Monday that one of the people that was there last week tested positive. So I'm home. I'm fine. I don't have any issues. My immune system is up. There are minerals and vitamins and things that I've been taking for the longest time, which brings me to this point. The poor nutrition of our people leads to poor health. And as you were talking, and the things that you and Leroy covered, I want to know, when they did the test studies, they're not doing a test study on the vaccine on an at-risk person. They're doing it on a relatively healthy person. And as you said, if a person has asthma or lupus or some other issue, they need to stay clear of it. And this is how, in my opinion, medical science is doing a disservice to people. Our people have a number of issues, and if this vaccine was not tested on a population, I would like to know how many black people were in these test studies that they did. And I'm only talking about Pfizer. Forget about Moderna. They're a joke. How many black people were in their test trials? And do they generally pick people in relatively good health as opposed to people who have compromised immunities in the test study for fear that it could cause anaphylactic shock? I've had anaphylactic shock from bad seafood, and I know it shut my windpipe down. And thank God I started sneezing, which would open it up for a few seconds so I could breathe. So do they ever use people who have a medical issue in test studies such as these? And lastly, this RNA, the ribonucleic acid, it's a modified RNA. So how does that modified RNA, does that have an effect on any of the RNA in our body? So that's the two things. People at risk in the test trials, how many black people are tested in the test trials with the vaccine, and then the RNA? Thank you.
And explain the RNA, please.
That's ribonucleic acid. It's part of
Let the
our
doctor do
genetic makeup. Okay.
Now, he did an outstanding job, Winston. Thank you so much, caller. You sound extremely informed. To approach the two questions you asked, I have attended conventions all over the world, and because I'm both an MD, PhD, I go to the scientific information types of conferences, and I go to the clinical. And I can say that 99% of the times, one of the disclaimers that is presented at a research scientific type of a conference, when they've done clinical trials, whether it's double blind, single blind, or whatever, they make the statement that the population that they have chosen to test in are young and healthy. And generally the test persons are medical students or some young professional college student like law students. In general, they are between the age of 19 and 25 and often predominantly white male, because many studies will pay $3,000 to $5,000 to have some young person come in for 2 to 3 weeks so they can get dosing right and so forth. So to answer your question, unless they have extensive class 3 trials where they take the vaccine or the medicine to a community-based evaluatory system, the very people that are targeted to take the medicine are not the people that the trials and testing have been done. And they justify it by saying, if we were to get people who have comorbidities, then we have to factor out the contributing problems when we present our data. So in order to get clean data, we try to control the persons that we do trials with so we can give you better data. So it's a trade-off. You can give me great data and tell me what you know about the entity, whether it's pharmaceutical or vaccine, but you're taking it out to a population where you have no data. So much of the diabetic medicines, the hypertensive medicines, renal medicines that are targeted to Black people have never been tested in Black people. So that answers the first part of your question. And the comment about anaphylaxoid that I made earlier It has two parts. Because this vaccine is unknown, you'll hear them say novel, never before tested, unknown. Anything unknown has no predictability.
Right.
But what they saw in the trials is people who had asthma or reacted to hay fever, who had arthritis and other low-grade immune problems, showed more side effects or anaphylaxoid-like processes. Now, you notice they said anaphylaxoid, which means they were already in a clinic, already by a doctor. So if you give me a shot and my windpipe starts to close, it's going to be immediately that I'm going to get that windpipe open. I can intubate you, I can give you Benadryl, I can give you phenhydramine, I can treat you immediately. What happens if I'm an elderly black woman with diabetes and hypertension and renal failure? I get the shot and go home.
Right.
Who's there to immediately respond to me?
Right.
No, nobody.
That's my questioning when I said we have a double whammy, that we are ignored when we present to the emergency system if we don't fall into the prescribed expectations. Maybe if I have diabetes and hypertension, you give me the shot, my windpipe doesn't close up, but I go into heart failure, my ankles swell.
Right.
And I present to you and say, oh, my ankles are swelling, my legs are itching. You're going to say, here, take some Benadryl and go home. But
Right.
those are symptoms of heart failure.
Wow.
So if we are marginalized and we're not responded to with the same level of acuity, if I see someone who's young, beautiful, 20-something come in, I'm vigilant because she should be healthy. That's our mindset. But if you get an obese black woman and you look at her and say, well, she's not healthy anyway, she's obese, or she has diabetes, the acuity level is not high. And that is one of what I meant by the marginalizing behavior of institutionalized prejudice. I've known that they have seated people in the waiting room much longer who have higher blood pressure readings because they're black. And I have even questioned when I was a student physician, how is it that at this clinic we treat when it's 140/95, and at the other clinic this person's 210/110, and they sat for 30 minutes?
Wow.
That's the institutionalized, that's the policy stuff that I'm talking about.
Well, Doc, we went through this cover letter that we were trying to get persons to sign to present to Joe Biden. Now, help us understand that this is a petition so we can get people to sign it.
Okay, let me take people back. About 23 days ago, in a conversation that involved you, Winston, and Mary, and several others.
November 18th.
Sorry?
November 18th.
Okay, I knew it was almost a month ago.
Right.
We talked about what needs to be done because it was all over the news that Joe Biden was appointing his panel to look at COVID. And our discussion was, I don't care what color, this was my words, I don't care what color the panel person is. I don't want you to tell me you got a black woman and a black man or a Hispanic woman. I want to know what are the objectives of the panel. Yes. Too often when there is a government study, they just repeat what we already know. Right. They'll say, poor people and black people have marginalized health care. So I'm saying, so what? Do something about it. Right. So in my proposal, which is summarized in a cover letter, states the action items, and some of the targets that are delineated include a formulary. In hospitals, particularly in rural settings where there are the most poor people and people without insurance, America may not know that health care in those settings is not the same as health care at an Emory or at an Ochsner or at a Cabrini, because that hospital through a panel will decide what medicines is this doctor allowed to write. You heard what I said. It is not the physician's decision. It's not the physician's ability, education, or discretion. It is what is allowed to be written at that hospital, and the selection is a cost containment decision. So if somebody, let's say Columbia is a major hospital owning business, they may have 300 hospitals in parts of Louisiana, and they decide that this is the amount of money this hospital has to earn per month, or we cut certain services or even close the hospital. There is little consideration of what is the needs of the people. And in that cost containment, they will generate a list saying, anybody coming here with diabetes can only have insulin or metformin. Anybody having hypertension can only get HCTZ or Norvasc. So if I'm the doctor and I'm all revved up, Winston, I've been to my conferences and I've been studying, and I know there's 33 different kinds of treatments for diabetes, and I come in, my guns are blazing, I'm looking at the patient, I say, okay, this is one of the new patients that has the bowel element of diabetes, and therefore they will benefit from this medication. And I write the prescription. I will get a call from the administration that says, Dr. Bowles, you can't write that prescription, it's not on formulary. So regardless of my abilities, regardless of the effectiveness of that medication that's been demonstrated, that patient can't get it. And if you've heard people say, well, I went to this hospital, I'm going to go to a big hospital. I've had a number of people in very remote parts of Louisiana travel 200 miles, 300 miles to get to the Ochsner in New Orleans, or get to the Cabrini in Alexandria and so forth, or LSU in Shreveport, because the big hospital's formulary will contain a wider variety of medications. Right. Now, people who didn't know that, I want that to go home in your head. That means if I'm poor, or I'm black, or I live in a rural part of this United States, my diabetes is not treated with the same vigor or aggressiveness as your diabetes. If you wonder why you see one-legged diabetics in the South, it's because amputation is the choice rather than the treatment of revascularization.
Yes.
Why are there so many black people on dialysis? Because just recently in one of the journals I read, there was a headline topic that said, we will no longer downgrade the EGFR for black people. And it was stated that the Urology Association in the United States have unanimously agreed that race is not an adequate criteria for the lack of response to renal failure. And I had to sit there and absorb that. They admitted for the last 3 decades, since they could measure EGFR, guys, is glomerular filtration rate. That tells you how well your kidneys work. And we measure protein, and when there's a little bit of protein in the urine, that means your kidney's doing its job. And when that protein goes up, if you get 10 times of that in your urine, that means your kidneys are failing. They're not doing their job. Well, they were intentionally ignoring, listen to what I'm saying, ignoring. If I were white and the number went from 4 to 8, you would rush me in, give me medication, change my diet. If I'm black and my number went 4 to 8, you did nothing. And they admitted it in a major journal. They would no longer downgrade the EGFR based solely on race. So there's various medical or societies that's stepping up saying, okay, race is not a scientific criteria, and our ignoring this. And, you know, that's why you're on dialysis. Your kidneys really failed 2 years ago, but I didn't do anything about it. The vasculature in your lower limb was really compromised 3 years ago, but I didn't do anything about it. So now we got to cut your leg off. I got to put a pacemaker in you because when I knew that you had alarming inflammation inside of your blood vessels, I didn't do anything. I didn't give you the medicine that would rescue you from that condition. So now I got to put a pacemaker in you or your heart will stop.
Well, I see this as a presentation of your ability to solve the unknown or what's coming. And we can all appreciate this. Dr. Bowles, I'm always amazed by every time we speak.
Education.
I mean, I'm just floored by your empathy, really, and your knowledge of us as a people and what we go through. I mean, we're sitting here I'm sitting there, you've blown me away. I mean, I'm just, we know these things, but who's to do something about it? So President-elect Biden, we're coming to you, my brother, because you were the vice president to a blessing from God, President Obama. So we expect you to pick up the mantle.
Yeah.
Huh? And we bring to you Dr. Bowles as a suggestion of somebody that can save our hides. Here's our presentation. So we've got a cover letter going out with Dr. Bowles' presentation, and hopefully I can get this video to you, President Biden. And hopefully we can get Reverend Sharpton to sign the petition or cover letter, which I'm appealing to Reverend Sharpton to do. And perhaps we even give Minister Farrakhan to sign this petition, because we're representing our people. All right?
Winston, just a comment. Their signature is certainly welcome, but I want their muscle. I don't want just signature. When you mentioned the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, my heart leaps because he has done so much in his sharing of good information.
Okay.
And I know now, and I've spoke to Brother Leroy a couple of times, information without action is entertainment.
Okay.
That's correct.
And I am not in the entertainment business.
Okay.
My interest is if there's someone who wants to join this consulate, and that's what I'm calling it. The consulate is not just me. I will lead it. I will stand there and you'll hear my voice. I won't throw rocks and hide my hand. You will know that Dr. Velva Bowles says this. And given the chance, I will assist in identifying policy that has been put in place since the 50s. I mean, since the 50s, we have been victim of progressive, systematic racism. The medical institutions of America teach things that are racic. The student doctors come out having gotten a great academic education and racic beliefs tacked in. So these are things I'm interested in rectifying, just like eugenics was part of the academic training at Harvard back in the 50s and the 60s into the 70s. The kind of healthcare neglect that Black Americans endure in the United States is equally heinous and also incorporated in the training of doctors here in America.
Dr. Bowles, we have about a minute left, but I want to say goodbye to the Bronx. Goodbye to Manhattan. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more information. You know? We're bringing it to you today, and stay tuned. We're going to bring more of this. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. All right? God bless.
May I ask Dr. Bowles a question before we?
Of course.
Dr. Bowles, two things. The soundness of taking a flu shot at this time in COVID season, and in anticipation of a person getting the vaccine, and also the soundness of giving the vaccines to people in the nursing home.
I think the direction is backwards, Brother Leroy. If they're trying to stop the spread of Corona-19, they need to get the most active population immunized first. That is a young person that wants to sit in a bar after 10 o'clock, a young woman who wants 100 people at her wedding. A senior citizen stays in their room all day. Why are you targeting them with something that can actually stress their body? So my advice is immunize frontline workers who want it and give it to the asymptomatic spreaders.
Peace and love. God bless. Power to the people.
Amen, amen, amen.
That was great. We did it, Doc.
Oh, man.